Have you ever wanted to hold a world record? Well, how about having 25 world records? In today's episode of The 5 Core Life, host Will Moore sits down with Stefi Cohen 25 times, that's right, 25 times, world record holder, to talk about how you can build a business from your passion, the top 2 habits that have led to her success and getting those 25 world records, and what it is that you can apply in your own life to become your own world record holder. If you haven't already, go ahead and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes of The 5 Core Life air. Are you ready to fire on all cylinders? If so, let's go.
World, there she is.
Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I hope the communication wasn't an error on our end. I know you guys wanted to confirm earlier. I don't know if our team got back to you on time.
No. We're good. Sorry, I was running a little bit behind.
Yeah, no worries. We were just chatting, taking questions and stuff. So thank you for being on. Great to see you.
Of course. Thanks for having
I
me.
will repeat. I was just kind of introducing you. 25-time world record holding power lifter. First woman in the history to deadlift 4.5 times, basically her weight. And, you're an author, you're a PhD. I believe I read that you're physical doctorate in physical therapy. Is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
My wife as well is that. So we got some stuff to talk about there. It's a very interesting field. So that's kind of just the 10,000 foot view of who you are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your backdrop and your story and how you got here and, kind of starting at maybe your childhood and what brought you to this point where you're this insanely awesome beast of a power lifter.
Of course. So I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela. I lived there until I was about 18 years old. I played soccer for the national Venezuelan team. So I've always kind of had a strong identity with being an athlete and was kind of like my dream when I was a little kid. So I came to the States to pursue a scholarship in soccer, initially moved to San Diego and ended up transferring over to Miami to be closer to my family. It's only a 2.5-hour flight from Miami to home. So that made a little bit more sense given the period of time in my life that I was at. So yeah, it was challenging, being an immigrant and being in another country by myself, trying to figure out the language, the culture, the ways that we were being tested in school, obviously like socially as well, trying to find my place in society. So I decided to stop playing soccer, which by the way is one of my biggest regrets now. But I feel like if I would have had a little bit more encouragement from maybe like my coach back home or my mom or something like that, I would have stuck with it and figured out a way to like make both things happen, But I was young and it is what it is. So as soon as I stopped playing soccer, I kind of began in this quest of, I call it discovery phases. I wanted to find another sport that I could be good at because I wasn't ready to give up on my identity as an athlete and not train and just focus on one thing. So I bought myself a triathlon bike. I did 8 half marathons in a year. I bought myself some gloves, tried kickboxing, a skateboard. Eventually landed into a CrossFit gym because one of my classmates, his name's Noah Olson. He's a big time CrossFitter and trained at a gym that was 3 miles away from school. So started going there and really fell in love with kind of like the shared suffering team training that CrossFit provides in the community. That was exactly kind of what I was looking for. I tried joining a sorority, didn't really feel like I found kind of people that were like me until that point.
So sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask you, during this time, when you were just discovered this CrossFit, so physically, were you always kind of muscular and like with a strong frame, or is that something that you transformed yourself into?
Well, I didn't really know because even though I played for the national soccer team back home, we didn't have access to high-end training facilities. So I had never lifted a weight in my life until I started CrossFit. But my baseline level of strength was pretty high. The first time I maxed out squat was like around 200 pounds, which was decent for somebody that weighs 100 pounds. So I kind of, going into CrossFit, I kind of knew that I had an aptitude for strength sports because of the speed at which I was acquiring those new skills and the speed of progress, like the rate of progress. Those were kind of my 2 indicators that maybe there was something there for me. And obviously I was enjoying it.
Right.
So that's kind of how I got into the world of lifting weights. I got picked by a national Cuban weightlifting coach, and he pretty much told me that if I wanted to and if I dedicate myself to the sport, that I could make it to the Olympics. And that was pretty enticing for me, especially because of the dreams and aspirations that I had as an athlete. So I started training with him, kind of transitioned out of CrossFit, did that for about 4 or 5 years, was able to get myself to being top 3 in the nation, and had a promising career in weightlifting. But I went to graduate school, and I just couldn't do both things. I got kicked out of grad school after my first semester and had to like write an appeal and everything because I was so scattered between doing 2 training sessions a day, just trying to balance everything out. And grad school is, that involves you're a professional student at that point. There's very high expectations of yourself that your teachers or professors are expecting from you, and the workload is insane. So it just got to a point where I really couldn't do both things. And it took me back to that like soccer time, right? Where I was again encountering this kind of fork in the road where I had to choose,
Mm.
okay, do I focus on my professional development academically in my career, or do I focus more on my sport and, see what happens with my career? I remember going into the appeal with the Committee of Academic Review with my professors, them pretty much telling me that I had to pretty much make a decision of whether I wanted to be an athlete or a student, that I wasn't as strong as a student as I thought I was, that I was going to have to give one of those up. And I don't know if it was the situation or my past experience with a similar situation or the way that things were said to me, but I just couldn't take that, I just couldn't accept that. So instead of retiring from lifting weights, or from weightlifting, I kind of in my mind put it on hold and started looking at alternate ways of training, which is kind of how hybrid was born, my business. So in the American weightlifting is pretty adverse to doing any movements that are outside of the snatch and the clean and jerk. But Western weightlifting, Bulgarian system, and just the Western style of training, the Eastern side of training is more focused on strength. So that's kind of how I landed in powerlifting and focusing more on strength. I kind of said, okay, well, I'm going to put the Olympic movements aside for a short period of time for the next 3 years. I'm going to practice them as often as I can, but I'm just going to focus on building my strength base as much as possible for the future. And that's kind of how I landed in powerlifting and how hybrid started. So hybrid is the business we started about 5 years ago. Initially, it was, we created our own platform to distribute online workout programs that were centered around strength in an accessible and affordable manner. And that grew really quickly and organically. We weren't like using marketing or advertising much. It was just kind of, there was a definite need in the market and a genuine interest for this particular style of training that we kind of came up with, which was looking like a bodybuilder, lifting like a weightlifter, like a powerlifter, and moving like a weightlifter. So that kind of caught people's attention, and it grew really fast. We had like 5,000 members after a couple of years that were using our platform. And pretty much every year thereafter, we've built another vertical to our business. So we started with just selling training programs, then we added nutrition coaching, individualized nutrition coaching, and expanded our software, our platform. Then we added apparel, then we added a gym, then we added a second apparel brand, podcast, YouTube, and we've just kind of like been building up on that. And now we're at a point where we're no longer coaches. We're really in the IT business. We're in the software as a service business, developing our own app. If you ever come visit us in our headquarters, we have 10 software engineers that work full time with us that are there all the time,
Wow.
supervised by one person. Yeah, and our team has grown from being just me and my partner Hayden to 60 people over the last 5 years.
That's great. Yeah, I'd seen. My story was similar where we started a restaurant delivery service. Where you live, do you guys have like Uber Eats and these types of companies where you can order food? Yeah. So they, it started with me and my business partner at his guest bedroom. And then, we did everything, and then we grew, and then in the end we ended up exiting and selling. And at that time we had we had 19 branches. We had thousands of drivers. We had, tons of managers. So it was neat. So I can relate to that feeling you get. There's no better feeling of creating something from scratch, right? And then just taking it up and seeing it grow and seeing people responding and liking what you're doing. And
What's crazy to me is I don't know how your development was with your business, but obviously we had big goals, big aspirations for what we wanted hybrid to become, but I honestly never thought that we would reach the size that we did, and that's something that I wish I had known prior, just how to set up systems and organizations to support the rapid growth of the business, because that's something that definitely bit us in the ass as time went by, just the lack of obviously like formal paperwork that binds employees, or that has non-competes, and or that states specifics about each job requirement. And obviously that kind of is keeping track of everything that's being done, so that in the case that someone has to leave, the transition between employees is more seamless.
right. It's funny. I know my team member was on here earlier who's helping coordinate this. Jay, I don't know if you're still on, but systems is a huge word in our company. It was a big part of my last company, and I learned the hard way, just like you did. We kind of didn't really know what to expect, and we sort of set it up, and it was our first business, and we said, okay, well, we'll do what we think are the things we should do, but we didn't take any real courses or read books on how to kind of set things up so that you can exponentially grow without a ton of friction, right? So it's like, I'm sure you've experienced what we did, which is you'd start to grow, and then all of a sudden you get whacked with an obstacle or something that you weren't expecting, and then that just stifles your growth, and you got to spend time dealing with it. And then, so now every business I set up, including this one, More Momentum, and what I'm doing here, we have these different aspects, podcasts and the social media and the app and the website, and each one has systems associated with it, and everybody that comes on our team knows what's expected of them, what their role is, and we have accountability measures and goals, and making sure, okay, if we get to this goal, are we prepared, and are we able to be able to handle it? So sounds like you've maybe started getting to that point as well.
Yeah, big time.
So tell me more about this book that you wrote. When did this come out?
I think earlier this year, or the beginning of this year, Back in Motion.
Okay, and what was the impetus of it? Like, what inspired you to write it, and what was the process of going through that? Was it a lot longer than you thought it would take? Shorter? More difficult?
Honestly,
easier?
It was less difficult than I thought it was going to be. Writing a book seems like such an impossible task, especially I don't know. I have my favorite authors. I look up to them as if they're gods, and sometimes I don't understand how they can sit down
Right.
and write so many pages. But I did
I
it.
feel the same way. Yeah.
And it wasn't that bad. But no, essentially, I was in graduate school, my first year of PT school, and I think like the combination of just being extremely stressed out from tests, sitting down for 14 hours a day studying and in class, and trying to be competitive at a sport that demands so much physically of you, I just started having awful back pain, but not like debilitating back pain where I couldn't put my shoes on. I had a hard time like dressing myself. I had to ask for help for that. I was like failing practical exams at school because like I couldn't bend over and do things to a wheelchair, or demonstrate certain things. And obviously I didn't want to just stop lifting, so I began a quest for trying to find what an answer for that issue that I had. And what was interesting was that, when you go to a doctor's office or a physical therapist's office or a chiropractor's office, you are essentially appealing to their authority on that subject and trusting that they have the answers for you, right? Like you look at them for those answers. And when they don't have them, it kind of bursts your bubble a little bit, because you're relying on them to help you, to get you out of pain. So I felt like I was a little bit disappointed in the inconsistencies of both diagnosis and treatment when it came to my own back pain. Like it just seemed to me that it was mostly speculative science rather than specific and objective. You know, it's like I guess the only frame of reference that I have to compare it to, because I've never been injured, is, I don't know, if you have a headache, then there's like these three particular causes that might be causing your headache, and then they give you these three pills that might help you, and you try them, and one of them works, you know. Whereas like in physical therapy, just the gray area was so much bigger than I thought it was, and so inconsistent that it was disappointing. So nothing would get me out of pain. Nobody would give me an answer that made much sense to me. You know, they would say things like my pelvis is shifted to the right, and that they could feel the 1 inch rotation in front, or that I had one segment in my spine that was hypermobile, causing this, that, and the other, or that I had vertebral end plate fractures. I don't know, all these like crazy diagnoses that just didn't make sense to me. So that's kind of what led me to just start doing my own research, just because I was curious, and because I figured that if I had all those questions and if I had all those struggles with my own back pain, then there's probably a lot more people that are on the same boat. So it honestly stemmed out of curiosity and a genuine desire to help other people. I never intended for it to be a moneymaker or anything like that. It's gonna be a 16-page long PDF that was gonna come out in conjunction with a Back Under the Bar program that was gonna be released through our software. And I don't know, every time that I was about to release it, I always felt like there was more information that I needed to put in there to kind of bring everything together holistically about back pain, because I realized that it wasn't only about structure and mechanical damage of a particular area of your body, but more about beliefs, perception, and your experience with pain.
Right.
So 16 pages turned into 20, turned into 30, and turned into a whole book. So that's pretty much how we got there.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I always admire people that they just do it and they write it. I've been writing a book for 25 years. I've gone the opposite way. I like started in college and I was like, okay, there's something here. And then I just kept tweaking, and then I went a different direction. And now I'm like at the point, and then I had another career in my business, and I just kind of didn't really work on it. And now it's like, all right, I want to finish it, but it's just so much information. I'm a note taker. I'm a crazy note taker. I'm constantly scribbling, or I used to be scribbling. Now it's like notes in my phone. Like if something comes to me or I notice something in the world, I'm like, okay, yes, I need to. That's a truth. That's a universal principle. I need to document that. And so now it's like an overwhelming amount of material that I'm like, okay, how do I put this in? Because as you know, you said you're a reader. Nobody wants to just read facts, right? People need personal stories.
A story.
It needs to be interesting.
For sure. Having a co-writer helps a lot. That's one of the things that made it so much easier for me. Being able to share that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's very fortunate to have a co-writer for sure. I'd love to have somebody take some of this burden off my plate, but I'm gonna get it done. It's one of my big missions. So with the PhD in physical therapy, so when did that happen?
So I graduated in 2018.
Yeah.
It was a 3-year program, and because of everything that I just told you, I just honestly didn't have a positive experience with school or the profession enough to convince me to go into clinical practice. So I actually never took my licensure exam. And that was a tough period of time, actually, because, you know, I got out of school. I had spent so much money and so much time for 3 years, and then just thought that I was never going to use it. I felt for a short time period that I had wasted my time.
Right.
And then when I stopped feeling sorry for myself, I tried to figure out ways to actually use the degree and create the job that I want for myself. And that's how, actually, this is another branch of hybrid. It's the hybrid education, which we have like master classes that I write using the knowledge that I gained in physical therapy. So I love teaching. I love being in front of a camera. I love being in front of an audience. I love helping people, and I love spreading truth and debunking myths. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 2-3 years is writing scripts, writing master classes, finding creative ways to teach people stuff. So if you see any of my IGTV videos, they're like 3-4 minutes long. Try to make them engaging and entertaining, and try to take a dry, complex topic and turn it into an entertaining, easy to understand bit.
So I would say you're gamifying education. I was talking about this a little bit before you came on, and it's been a big theme of what I've really been because I'm gamifying. I'm trying to gamify people's wellness. I mean, you're more specific in terms of like the physical side of it, whereas I have these 5 different cores: your career and finances, your relationships, your mindset, your physical health, your emotional health, and giving back. And I'm building this app. I was talking briefly before you got on about you're the spaceship, and you have these 5 core cylinders of your engine, and you're going to fly up, and there's going to be asteroids, and there's going to be meteors you're going to encounter, and you got to continue to stop the bad habits that you have and replace them with success habits. And so, but what you're doing is kind of a similar thing in that you're making it fun and interesting, which is really the key, taking bland, dry, boring topics, which is not easy to do, and make them exciting so that people want to learn about them, they want to watch. And I mean, you look at your Instagram page, what do you have, like 1 million followers, huge engagement on your posts. Clearly you're doing something right. So kudos. You've done a good job there. So speaking of habits, I kind of always like to ask people, it could be one or it could be multiple, but maybe one or two failure habits that you had at the beginning. You said you struggled a bit coming out of college and not knowing really what you wanted to do, and you were playing soccer, and you didn't really have like that guidance, and then you kind of, sounds like you met this coach, and he kind of was like, okay, I believe in you. You can do this, right? And then that sort of helped propel your direction to where you are now. Were there habits that you had before, during that rougher period that you since have now replaced with, let's call them failure habits versus success habits?
Honestly, the one that comes to mind is procrastination. But the thing is that I thought for a long time that it was a failure habit, and then I realized that it was actually just the way that I operate. Like, it's, would I have been better off, I don't know, studying for a longer period of time for my test instead of like cramming at the end? Maybe, but that would have meant that I would have trained less. Maybe I wouldn't have achieved my athletic goals. So I think I'm a procrastinator out of necessity, and it's just like the way that my brain is happiest is being scatterbrained, and just multitasking, leaving shit for last minute, and then having to be under pressure to complete a task. Somehow everything gets done.
I like how you put that. I've never had somebody answer it the way you just did, which is very unique. You're basically saying it's the same habit, but it's how you looked at that habit. So
exactly.
Procrastination, right? I mean, there's the Pareto principle, the 80-20, kind of like the whole, if you have less time to do something, you actually are much more efficient, right? Like, give somebody a week to write a paper in school, and they'll take a week. Give them like 2 hours, and they'll write it in 2 hours, and oftentimes the 2-hour version is just as good, if not better, than the 2-week one, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not always the case, but there's definitely a lot of truth to that. So,
and I guess the other one, you asked me for two, I guess the other one would be just like organization. I think that when, I used to be really messy back in college, and I felt like that kind of permeates into other areas of my life. So one of the quotes that most resonates with me is, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So, at the most basic level, like folding your clothes, making your bed, making sure your car's clean at all times, looking presentable. Just those basic kind of like human behaviors need to be present so that you have a concrete base from which you do everything else.
You know what? I love that. It's so true. Like, the more I call them, there's these messes in our life. Just even like your desk at your office, or just your garage needs to be cleared out. Like, when you have all these messes in your life, I think it makes it really hard to feel just like on top of things and kind of gain that momentum. Like, you feel like, oh, I got to clean this, I got to do this. When you're able to kind of stay organized and kind of clean house and stay on top of things, it just frees your mind to focus on the things that matter.
100%. And I guess like that's an area of procrastination that I don't allow myself to have. If I wake up, I make my bed. It's like it just kind of, now it's automatic. Wake up, I make my bed, I take my clothes off, I put it in the bin. I wash my clothes, I fold them. I don't procrastinate on those things.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic habit, right? It's just like brushing your teeth. It's like you once you do it, once you start making your bed, once you start folding the clothes, it becomes automatic, and it's not even a big deal. So, well, thank you very much. I know you're busy for being on the show. This was fantastic. I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us and dropping some wisdom on our viewers. And do you have your own podcast as well?
I do, yeah. Hybrid Unlimited. I would love to have you as a guest, by the way.
Yeah. What are you guys? What is your top? What are the topics that you guys do?
Unlimited.
Unlimited.
Everything and anything.
All right. Well, I'd love to come and talk about the 5 course. I'd love to do it and gamification. Okay. I'll reach out. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Stefi. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks for everybody for coming on. Bye-bye.
That's it for the 5 Core Life. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes drop. Also, please fill out the free 5 Core Life Evaluator quiz. It's a great way to get a baseline of where you are in the 5 cores and which of the 5 cores you need support. In addition, you'll get some actionable advice that you can apply and start improving your life in the areas that you need it most. That's it for today's episode of the 5 Core Life Podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Get moving. Gain momentum. Join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.